I'm Bradley Sowash, jazz piano and educator, and this month's improv tip is all about what I'm calling the other blues scale. This down. Well, welcome to another improv tip of the month. I'm Bradley Sowash, jazz pianist and music educator. And today we're talking about the other blues scale, a useful collection of notes for playing blues, but also particularly useful in swing. And that is part of this Style School series that I'm doing this month. And it is already had walking bass and how to comp, and doing this period. And this one is all about what I call the other blues scale, which I will reveal the name soon. So here's my plan. First, I'm going to do a little bit more about how the blues scale we're going to talk about sounds. Then I'll explain how to construct it and what to call it, and then I'll share some starter licks so you and or your students will have some notes to imitate as we get going. So let's just listen less in a wow way and more in a what are those notes that I'm playing in my right hand over just a typical boogie blues progression. I'm going to keep my licks simple for now so we can listen to the sound of that. So hopefully that was simple enough to kind of get your ears into the quality of the scale that we're looking at today. So a lot of people who are getting into improvisation discover, in a way, a more modern blues scale, and it has a dark quality or a minor quality to it. In fact, it's so ubiquitous in music education, and especially for teenagers who are discovering the sound of this scale, that it's just called the blues scale by many. But there are more than one blues scale. There are two common ones, and we could go deeper and talk about, there's an octatonic scale that's very useful. There is an altered scale. There's good meat out there for injecting blues into your styles. But the one that most of us are familiar with because of where we are in history is actually not the most oldest and influential one from the earliest days of jazz piano. And that would be the dark blues. So I call it the dark blues because it is has a minor quality. Now this is a little hang-up that I have. The notes in it, I'll first explain, are C, E flat, F, F sharp, G, B flat, C in the key of C. Now, I don't like to call any blues scale a major blues scale or a minor blues scale, although those are terms that are used. because to me, all blues scales deliberately blur the tonality, whether it's major or minor, is obscured by the use of blue notes, and that is that quality that we're after when playing blues. Because after all, we're imitating a vocal style. I got the blues so bad, I'm feeling so out of tune. That kind of bent sound is what we're imitating, and that has a lot of minor notes when we're in a major key, and it uses some major notes in a minor key, and it's just all blended. It's really its own style. It has its own theory, rules, and so I renamed some of these scales, which are so commonly mixed up, and so I call it the dark blues. And again, you might just try this if you're at a piano. C, E flat, F, F sharp, G, B flat, C would be the one that most people know. C, E flat, F, F sharp, sometimes spelled G flat, G, B flat, C. Now, there's a couple ways that you can locate this more common blues scale. One of them is to play that famous Eric Clapton lick that we know from, if we're old enough to have lived through part of the 60s anyway. Let's see. So that just worked its way down the blues scale. C, B flat, C, G, G flat, F, C, E flat, C, right? So again, those notes from the bottom up, C, E flat, F, F sharp, G, B flat, C. Backwards, C, B flat, G, F sharp, F, E flat, C. So one way to find that scale in any key is to ear out that famous lick. Just for example, I'll try it in D. Half step. You know, a lot of people just know that lick, so we could just, that's the ear approach. Another way we can get at it is to think about it as being notes in a scale. So if we take a C minor scale, we're going to just use the notes 1, flat 3, 4, and then an in-between note, sharp 4, 5, 7, dominant 7, and C. I think that's kind of a complicated way to get at it. So what I like to do is think about it as a C minor 7 chord, those notes being C, E flat, G, and B flat. C, E flat, G, and B flat. And to that we're going to add the 2 half steps below the 5th. So look, C, E flat, G, and then just go down 2 half steps. So those will be part of our dark blues club, and the rest is chord tones. So it's all C minor 7 with 2 extra notes, F and F sharp. And you can do that in any key. So let's try a G. G minor 7, G, B flat, D, F spells the chord, and we're going to add the 2 half steps below the 5th, which is D. G, B flat, D, and we have those C sharp and C. So in the key of G, G, B flat, C, C sharp, D, F, G. You want to know this in a lot of keys, because the more keys you can play it in, the more you can pull it out and push it into the middle of a song on a particular chord or a temporary tonality where it leaves the home key. You just want to have that versatility that any improvising musician will emphasize, learning to play in at least common keys. So let's listen to the sound of the dark blues scale, and it has other names, as I said. It can be called the blues scale, it can be called minor blues scale, and or what I like to call it is the dark blues scale. So let's listen to that exclusively as a sound that I haven't played so far. Deliberately confine myself to just those notes we just discussed, C, E flat, F, F sharp, G, B flat, and C. And because the left hand in a typical blues accompaniment style leaves out thirds, this gives room for the sound of this scale to lead our ear towards the color that we want. And I think you heard that had a real down, dirty, down home, gritty, rib sauce sucking, great blues sound. And so if we're going to color a blues or a swing piece with a really dark and kind of gritty, even like, let's see. That really gritty bluesy sound. We're going to use that more popular blues scale, which you probably already know about. And just a warning to teachers: once you show this to your students, you will they get kind of hooked on it. There are other ways to improvise for the blues scale, but this is such a win-win type of thing that they can sometimes get sort of locked into this scale. Let me check in with these fun comments. Rib sauce sucking. I'm having fun now. Sure sounded a lot more like notes more than those. No, it wasn't. It's just those, but yep, good. It's all smoke and mirrors, right? All right, so that's the blues scale we know. Now I want to break down the other blues scale. And having named one of those scales the dark blues scale, you can probably already guess that I call this other blues scale the bright blues scale. This is a very old blues scale in the history of jazz piano. This is the sound you're going to hear in stride pianists like, let me get into a position here where I can see you and you can see me. Okay, people like Fats Waller and Art Tatum, and you're going to hear jazz singers like Ella Fitzgerald improvise with this. Even, we've just been listening to a lot of Christmas music with Bing Crosby and Nat King Cole. This is the scale they're going to use to add just a touch of color, what we call injecting blues, into their swing style, usually, music. And so it is very different notes. If you look at it, it doesn't have that B flat. It doesn't have, it's very, doesn't have that same character. Let's listen to it for a minute. C, D, E flat, E, G, A, C. So you can hear how, while it still obscures the major and minor tonality, it leans major because it lacks that dominant seventh and that very dark F sharp note that we saw previously. So there's a couple ways to construct this scale, and it has a couple of names. You will sometimes see it referred to as the major blues scale, and I already said why I'm not a fan of that name. How can you have a major C scale with an E flat in it, for example? And then you also can call it a flat third pentatonic scale, which to my ear is awfully academic. People name things like this in order to write dissertations and get those fancy pieces of paper that I don't go sometimes out and play gigs, So on a gig, you're not going to ask the saxophone player to play the flat third pentatonic scale. In fact, you're probably not going to say anything other than let's play a blues, and they will lean into this one or the other one. But I like to call it the bright blues scale because it has a little bit more cheerful character than the other one. It also is very versatile because you can play this in non-blues styles. It works all over the place. It's really something you want in your back pocket. And here's how I would say to form it. For those of you who are familiar with the pentatonic scale, and if you're not, you need to be, because they're the best 5 notes in the improvisation world, regardless of style. Everywhere from the Far East style of improvising in India and everywhere else, everybody in the world seems to come up with the pentatonic scale, which is C, D, E, G, A, C, as what I love to call safe notes for improvising. And to that pentatonic scale, C, D, E, G, A, C, we're adding that flat third, which I've underlined in blue, because that's the original blue note. This is the blue note that W.C. Handy is using in St. Louis Blues. This is the blue note you're going to find in the early tunes by like Sweet Home Chicago, and so this is where you're going to hear swing players tossing this in. It's just a little color note, and so let me demonstrate this exclusively in the same style that I was playing before. So. Here it is, E flat, E, G, A, C. C, or from the bottom up. It has a happy sound. Right there at the end, I put in one chromatic note just to make the turnaround a little bit more successful. So what's fun to do, actually, is to mix and match these in a blues environment, and then I'll show you how to use them in a tune that is not a blues tune. So let me just show you how much fun it is to, sort of like a painter, to take these notes as a palette and color your expression a little bit darker, a little bit lighter, like hues. All right, let's start with the bright blues. Slow. You know, I got the happy blues. Things are going so well today. Uh-oh. The bottom fell out, and I'm feeling dark. Ah, it's all right. Back to happy. Change scales every 4 measures. To be more subtle about it, you can mix and match them more quickly. See if you can sort these out. So I kind of blended those back and forth, just shading it a little bit one way or the other. It's a degree of subtlety that comes with time, I guess, and you just really play around with that. But the cool thing about the bright blues scale, and what I want to show you today, and why it's part of my style school series called Swing, about swing, is that you can plug this scale in anywhere. Take a song as benign and simple and vanilla as Sentimental Journey, right? Right, I think a lot of us know that. So let's see what would happen if in the holes of that song, the pauses in the melody, if I played some bright blues fills. You'll hear how it injects it with just a little bit of, I would call it an American sound. I'll go ahead and put on a little bass that also plays the cymbal here, and I have under my feet a drum and a hi-hat. So we'll give that a go. 1, 2, 3. Now solo. Bright blues. If we had tried to put into that cheerful, happy tune the normal V blues scale, what everybody calls it, what I call the dark blues scale, it just really wouldn't work as well, you know? It's just like having a bowl of vanilla ice cream and then suddenly biting into a super hot spicy burrito. It just doesn't really mix right there in the same bite. So let me check in with these comments here. I love seeing your comments, and if you want to throw me some hearts or anything like that, if you're enjoying it, it makes me feel good. So this is new to me, says Kareen. I have so many questions. Yeah, we're not going to cover all about blues in 30 minutes. This is just to whet your taste buds. In fact, that is a great intro for me to put on my entrepreneur hat. And I have an entrepreneur hat. You can see it has my little logo there, the Bradley So Wash logo. And just take a commercial break. You know, I have to put on my entrepreneur hat because you know, we all need to make a living, right? So I just want to tell you about 3 things related to this. Many of you know I have this That's Jazz series published by Chose Music, KJOS. It's the best-selling jazz piano method in the world. The reason it's relevant today, see my very well-worn copies here. I've traveled all over America with this, you know, showing it to teachers and teaching with it. It's actually a 9-book series, but the core method is 3 books for beginning, intermediate, and advanced. That's intermediate, and there's advanced. And it features the 3 dominant cultural influences in jazz, which is Europe, Africa, and I would just call it Latin countries. Where, you know, those are the 3 threads that have influenced our melting pot American music outside of the... Yeah, anyway, so those are acknowledged with the way it's presented in a multicultural way. Anyhow, the reason I mention it is that all 3 of these books, and I believe all 3 of the supplemental books, but for sure these, I'd have to look, involve blues tunes. They have blues tunes in them, like one of them's called, Blue Note Special, for example. And they have built into them lesson plans about how to present this sound to your students. And they also have built into them steps for easy improvisation in a blues style. So that might be interesting to some of you, both personally and as a teacher. The second thing I want to tell you about is that I have a pre-recorded course called Intro to the Blues on my website, bradleysowash.com. It's a 4-lesson course. And what it is a replay of a live class I taught on this subject, much like I'm doing today, but with multiple camera angles and so on. Taking off my entrepreneurial hat, I want to share with you a couple of starter licks so you can go and put these scales right together. So Suzanne says, could you play an example of injecting that bright blue note into a hymn? Sure, let's do that. Thank you for that question. Let's say we're doing Amazing Grace. We have this pause. Actually, let's put this in a more of a 9/8 feel so it has that shuffle. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Here we go. So I took that break in there to really emphasize that. You can put it in between, sort of like parentheses in a sentence, and you can just move it into your melody. Becomes E flat to E. So that's the whole thing. Injecting blues is a wonderful thing, and the scale to use is that bright blue scale we looked at today. Let me leave you with a couple of licks so you can go experiment with this. And let me just read a comment here. Paul says, I'm actually glad you're pitching this because I'm looking for just this sort of thing. Well, Paul, I'm glad you're here. And thank you, says Suzanne. I love interactive questions. Diana, who's a kind of a gospel church pianist, says it's right up her style with a shuffle. She's got a real handle, having played that her whole life on that style. So here's just a couple licks to get started. And I'm not a big believer in just copying licks other than just to get started, because if improvisation is just play lick number 47 and then plug in lick number 22 and then lick number 103, you know, it's not improvisation. We want to rather have, it's paint by number if we do that. We want to have our own expression. But I know you need a few to get started. So here's my thought for the day. Let's do it with the bright blues we've been looking at. I'm just going to play up. Let's see. because it just goes straight up the scale. And here's the great secret. I'm just laughing, Alice, but I love lick 42. Yeah, it's kind of like telling jokes with numbers. Here's the great secret. If you have a lick, you automatically have 3 licks. Because one thing you can do is just play that backwards. Backwards. So, any lick you learn, do it backwards. And then, something that makes no sense but can be a prompt, play it inside out. So start in the middle of your idea and turn it all around. So and there are probably 10 ways, maybe 100 mathematically, that you could define what I meant by inside out. Just take your shape and start in the middle and do something with it. Let's take that same lick and play it with the dark blues scale. And backwards. So just up and down with a cool rhythmic idea is a way to generate a hand position and a start on improvising with these blues scales. But today we're really mostly interested in that bright blues scale, the one that gets skipped, and in some ways it's such a useful scale because you can just plug it in all over the place, like the hymn we just did, that C major Sentimental Journey, Christmas tunes. It doesn't really matter if it has a cheerful, swingy feel. Then we can do that. All right, so we're coming down to the end here, and I just would like to remind you that who I am. I'm Bradley Sowash, and if you like learning improvisation tips like this with me, I hope that you do all that stuff. You're supposed to like, follow, subscribe, share, and all that kind of stuff with your other piano buddies. Let me take one more look here and see if there's any last minute questions, and then I'll play it out. Corrine thanks me for that. Yeah, thank you. Lick 47. So I'm really glad you're here. There will be a replay for a while, but it means so much when you come in person. I think the way that I'm going to wrap this up is I'm just going to have some fun playing. If you want to wander on with your day, then Suzanne says, where is the link for the comping video? You'll find those on the Bradley Sowash music page. And by the way, many of these eventually find a home at the Improv Tips blog on my website, bradleysowash.com. It usually takes a couple of months for me to work those into my blog, because y'all got me so busy teaching. Okay. Thanks for dropping by, Mike. Yeah, appreciate you saying that you're here and everything. So I'll just play it out, have a good time. If you want to listen some more, that's fine with me. And I'm going to use these blues in a swing context. I'm basically done now in terms of the education, but I always love to do what Diana calls ramming and jamming. So I'll set up more of a swing blues. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. My bass player and drummer into it. So I'll let them get going first. And we'll bring the piano in lightly. All right. Until next time, enjoy your creative music making journey. I'm Bradley Sowash. See you another time.